Jaclyn Marie Dowaliby, known as Jackie, was born on May 17, 1981. She lived in Midlothian, Illinois, with her mother, Cynthia Dowaliby, her adopted father, David Dowaliby, brother, and also David's mother, who lived with them in the basement. On the morning of the 10th of September 1988, David and his son woke up before everyone else. At 7:15 a.m, David had noticed the front door was open and assumed his mother had gone out and accidentally left the door open. After a couple of hours, Cynthia, who was now awake, decided to go in and wake up her 7-year-old daughter, Jaclyn. After walking into her bedroom, she immediately noticed her daughter wasn't there and started to search the rest of the house, whilst thinking she had gone out to play with friends. David and his son went out to search for Jaclyn, but couldn't find her. When Cynthia went back into Jaclyn's bedroom, she noticed that the comforter that Jaclyn always slept with was missing. This confused Cynthia, because Jaclyn wouldn't ever take the comforter out with her if she was playing. Cynthia decided to go over to a neighbour's house, and as she was about to go past the basement window, she noticed the glass had been broken. It looked as if someone had done this to gain entry into the house. Within a few hours, the FBI and the police had turned up, expecting it to be a ransom, and waited for a call for a ransom demand. This never happened. They questioned Cynthia and David at length, wanting to know what that morning had consisted of, and what both parents were doing on the morning Jaclyn was found to be missing. It seems that the investigators had initially thought the basement window had been broken from the inside, meaning someone in the house must have been involved in Jaclyn's disappearance. The day after, on the 11th of September, David was taken into the FBI headquarters in Chicago and given a polygraph test. He had passed with flying colours. On the 14th of September, Jaclyn's body had been found in a field near Blue Island in Illinois. At the scene was Jaclyn's comforter and nightdress. Also a rope was around Jaclyn's neck. Meanwhile, David had been asked to come in for another polygraph test. Investigators had said that he was uncooperative. The reason for this was that they wanted him to say yes to everything to be able to determine what it would look like if he had lied on the polygraph test. This was fine until they asked if he had killed his daughter. He refused to say yes at this point. They had interrogated him for hours until police interrupted him and said that they had found his daughter's body and that she was dead. David was angry that they had said this, not believing them, thinking it was another tactic to get a confession out of him. It wasn't until he got home and seen his wife crying, it was then he realised that it was true, what the police had said, and that his daughter was dead. A case was built against Cynthia and David, and in November 1988, both were arrested and charged with Jaclyn's murder. Cynthia at this point was 2 months pregnant. Whilst the Dowalibys protested their innocence, prosecutors had built this case on circumstantial evidence. A guy called Everett Mann, a transit worker, became a prosecution witness after he had picked David out in a photo lineup. He said that on the night of the murder, he had seen David sitting in a car near the site where Jaclyn's body had been found. He had noticed that the guy had a prominent nose. The defence team thought that this was very unlikely, as Everett was at least 75 yards away, in the dark with no lighting. Plus, he had only seen the person from the side, whereas David's picture was front-facing. The other thing was that out of the 5 pictures shown to Mann, David's picture was larger than the others, purposefully making him stand out more. 2 eyewitnesses claimed to have seen Cynthia's car at the scene. This was discredited because it had been confirmed that Cynthia's car had been in her driveway all along. Results from forensic analysis done on the broken window concluded that the window had actually been broken from the outside and not the inside as first thought. But at this point, Cynthia and David had already been arrested. Now, the prosecution wanted to know how possible it was to climb through the basement window and not disturb the TV, a TV stand, nightstand, towel rail, and a makeup tray that was directly below it. David took video evidence of someone doing exactly this and proved that it could easily be done without disturbing anything. Other evidence against the Dowalibys was a blood-stained pillow found in Jaclyn's room. Head hairs similar to Jaclyn's was found in the trunk of the family car. Also, Jaclyn's brother had said to police that his sister got spanked a lot, And then finally, a neighbour had identified the rope around Jaclyn's neck, and it was the rope that Jaclyn's brother played with. It was determined that the blood on the pillow could not be identified, and the head hairs could not be confirmed as to whether they belonged to Jaclyn or not. The defence had accused a convicted sex offender, Perry Hernandez, who actually committed a similar abduction a year after Jaclyn had been murdered, but as it turned out, that the evidence found on Jaclyn did not match Perry Hernandez, and so he was cleared. In the closing arguments, David and Cynthia did not get to testify. Also, the judge addressed both legal teams without the jury present. It was decided that they could go ahead with David's conviction but didn't have enough evidence on Cynthia to be put in front of the jury. After 3 days of deliberating, the jury came back with guilty on first-degree murder. He was sentenced to 45 years in prison. Cynthia and a lot of other people didn't accept that David was guilty of this crime, and a grassroots movement was created, which got the attention of a legal journalist, David Protest, which also included a man called Paul Hogan, to work together on reports criticising the conviction in the hope of getting David Dowaliby released. In 1991, Illinois Court of Appeals reversed David's conviction, who by now had spent 18 months in prison, and ordered his release. Investigators were still convinced that they had the right man, but didn't have enough evidence to prove it. Another suspect had piqued the interest of investigators, and the name of that man was Timothy Guess, who was actually brother to Jaclyn's biological father, Jimmy, who was in prison at the time of Jaclyn's death. Timothy Guess was a schizophrenic, and at the time he was being investigated, said that he had an alibi, as he was working at a local restaurant at the time of her murder. He also had a witness backing it up. However, regular patrons that had been there that night said he wasn't there at all. It wasn't until American Justice aired on TV in 1992, which featured the case, that the witness that gave Timothy the alibi actually phoned up and changed their story. Another important thing is that Timothy had links to an apartment very close by to where Jaclyn's body had been found. When David Protest spoke to Timothy Guess, he mentioned something that wasn't public knowledge, and that was the closet light was the only light on in Jaclyn's bedroom. He also told Protest about the layout of the bedroom and the house as well, even though he hadn't ever been there. Guess said that a spirit lived inside of him, giving him details of what happened to Jaclyn. Although the case was reopened, no charges were filed against Timothy. In 2002, Timothy died. To this day, Jaclyn's case remains unsolved.